They called it progress. I called it suicide on stilts. The day the skydeck collapsed, I watched the same neighbors who'd ignored my warnings run screaming through a cloud of concrete dust, and the HOA president who mocked me for living in the past begged me to pull him from the rubble. You don't forget a sound like that: steel, groaning, cracking, giving up. You don't forget the look on a man's face when gravity caches his arrogance. I used to think Meadow Ridge Estates was peace. Every morning I'd wake before dawn, make coffee, and sit on my porch while mist curled around the old clubhouse lawn. The fountain would sputter to life like an old friend, and for a while I believed I'd found a place where life finally slowed down. I was retired 35 years as a structural engineer with the Army Corps finally behind me. I'd buried my wife 2 years before moving here. I wanted quiet. Instead, I found the HOA. At first, it seemed harmless: rules about lawns, paint colors, fences. Order was fine by me. Then came the new board, a group of young visionaries led by a man named Richard Mallory. Richard was all teeth and handshakes, the kind of guy who'd sell you the air you were breathing if you didn't watch your wallet. "We're going to modernize Meadow Ridge," he said. "Bring prestige back." That's the first time I heard that phrase. Property values. He said it like it was scripture. One night, after a meeting full of buzzwords and bad coffee, he caught me outside my yard trimming my azaleas. He handed me a glossy flyer. "You'll love this, Daniel," he said, flashing that realtor grin. "We're building multi-level parking decks above the clubhouse. Double the amenities, double the value." I stared at the drawing: 2 concrete decks stacked on top of a 40-year-old building. Above the clubhouse, I asked, thinking maybe I'd misheard. "That's right," he said proudly. "State-of-the-art." My stomach sank. The clubhouse foundation was shallow cinder block, never meant to hold that kind of load. I'd seen the stress cracks myself years ago when they redid the tiles. "Who approved this?" I asked. "Oh, we've got contractors. Licensed," he said, brushing it off. "You'll love the new look." But I didn't. Because what he described wasn't progress, it was physics ignored. And physics doesn't forgive. I stayed quiet at first. Maybe that was my mistake. I didn't want to be the cranky old engineer arguing with the new guard. But when the first excavators rolled in, tearing up the lawn, when the smell of diesel replaced the scent of cut grass, I knew it was time to speak. At the next HOA meeting, I raised my hand. "Has the city approved the load increase?" I asked. Richard smiled, polished as ever. "Of course, Daniel, everything's above board." "What about the stress ratio?" I pressed. "That foundation can't handle a 2-deck structure. You're doubling the live load." Now, he interrupted, laughing softly. "Let's not bore everyone with technical talk. You're retired, right? Let us handle progress." The room chuckled. I felt my jaw tighten. "Progress doesn't mean ignoring physics," I said, but my voice got drowned out by applause. The next week, I got my first violation notice: trash bins left out too long. Then, another mailbox: paint color. HOA fines came like clockwork, all signed by Richard himself. I knew what it was: intimidation. Bureaucratic chokehold. I'd seen the same tactic in corrupt contractors overseas. Silence through paperwork. Still, I couldn't shake the worry. Every time I heard the hum of machinery, I imagined the sound of stress cracking under pressure. One night, I sat at my old laptop, ran the numbers myself. Beam width, spacing load, distribution, rough calculations, but enough. My simulation flashed red across the screen: structural failure likely within 6 months. I mailed the report anonymously to the county building safety office and a copy to the local news tip line. Not out of spite, out of duty. Then the next morning, I found a letter taped to my door. "Cease interference with community projects or face legal action for harassment." Signed, HOA, President Richard Mallory. I pinned it to my fridge like a trophy. They thought I'd back down. They didn't know that silence was my enemy, not theirs. Weeks passed. Construction kept climbing. The steel skeleton rose like a monument to arrogance. My neighbors called it exciting. I called it inevitable. When I tried to warn a few of them, they smiled politely and changed the subject. Nobody wanted conflict, not when property values were involved. Then one night I saw a small hairline fracture along one of the weld lines on the lower beam. Tiny, almost invisible, but I knew what it meant. I took photos, time-stamped them, and sent them to an old colleague, Evelyn Ross, retired city inspector. She replied within hours. No permit filed. No structural variance. This is illegal. That word illegal lit a fire in me. It wasn't just bad planning anymore. It was fraud. I went public. The next day, HOA volunteers stopped talking to me. People crossed the street to avoid eye contact. And that night my mailbox was smashed, tire tracks cut across my yard, and a dead crow was left on my porch. Message received. For the first time I felt the doubt sink in. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should have just stayed quiet, let it play out. I sat at my desk, staring at the cracks in my own walls, wondering if I'd become the crazy old man shouting at clouds. But then I opened a letter my late wife had written years ago. Don't let them take your peace. Peace isn't silence. Peace is truth. I called Evelyn. I'm not done, I told her. She chuckled. Good, because I found something. Turned out Richard's firm had been fined 3 times before for unpermitted work. Every contractor on the Skydeck project was tied back to his own companies. It wasn't just ego, it was self-dealing, pure profit. So I gathered everything: photos, permits, load tests, emails, and gave them to the county. Evelyn sent them straight to a friend in the DA's office. But Richard wasn't done either. The HOA served me with a lawsuit, defamation, and harassment. A man in a cheap suit handed me the packet like he was delivering a death sentence. I read it on my porch, under the porch light, each page trembling in my hands. They wanted to silence me legally now. 2 days later, Anna Reyes, my neighbor, came to my door. My brother's a firefighter, she said quietly. They've already had 3 calls at the site, minor collapses. Something's not right. She looked scared. So was I. But fear has 2 faces, one that freezes and one that focuses. The HOA announced the grand opening gala cocktails ribbon-cutting Meadow Ridge Rises. I couldn't stay home. I had to see it. I had to know. The morning of the event, I walked to the site. The whole structure gleamed in the sun. Fresh asphalt glass railings, banners flapping like flags before a battle. I spotted Richard in a navy suit smiling for the cameras. Didn't think you'd show up, he called out. Come to congratulate us. I came to make sure no one gets hurt, I said. He grinned. You really should try to move on. Today's a celebration. Physics doesn't celebrate, I muttered. By noon, the deck was packed. Music, laughter, champagne. Kids running, cameras flashing. Richard stepped onto a small stage with a microphone. Today, Meadow Ridge proves we are not afraid of progress, he declared. Then the deck shuddered. Just a little. Enough to make the glass railings tremble. I felt it through my boots, a faint vibration, uneven, oscillating. My stomach turned cold. I pressed my hand to the surface. The vibration was wrong. The load wasn't distributing, it was slipping. Anna, I shouted. She turned. Get the kids off the deck, now. She didn't ask why, she just moved. Then it came a deep, hollow pop. The kind of sound an engineer never forgets. A sound that means something gave way. The southeast corner sagged an inch, then 2. Plates slid off tables. People stumbled. Everyone off, I screamed. Move. Panic spread like fire. The deck groaned. Steel shrieked. The floor split with a sharp crack, spidering like lightning. Screams filled the air as the deck folded inward, crashing through the old clubhouse roof. Dust exploded, drowning the sunlight. I ran through the haze, pulling people toward the ramp. A child was pinned under a railing. I grabbed a wooden beam, wedged it under the slab, and pried it up while 2 others dragged the boy free. Sirens wailed in the distance. When the dust began to settle, I saw him, Richard, standing near what was left of the stage, his face gray with shock, staring at the gaping hole in the center of the deck. It wasn't supposed to, he stammered. I grabbed his arm just as another section cracked above us. The permits, I shouted. You said it was safe. They said it was, you mean, you. I pulled him backward as concrete shards rained down where he'd been standing. Firefighters stormed in moments later, shouting, spraying water on the sparking wires. When they finally pulled us clear, I looked around at the ruins, the sky deck pancaked into the old clubhouse cars buried under rubble, neighbors sobbing in shock. Someone whispered, he warned them. No one said anything else. The next morning, the HOA released a statement. We are deeply saddened by this unforeseen incident. They blamed contractor negligence. But Evelyn had already found the emails, the proof that Richard knew. He'd even written it. It'll hold long enough for the ribbon cutting. When the county issued the arrest warrants, the news vans were already outside his house. Fraud, falsified reports, criminal negligence. He was handcuffed on his own driveway while cameras rolled. The same neighbors who once clapped for him now peeked through blinds. When the DA called, they wanted my testimony. In court, I stood under those harsh lights and told them everything. The meetings, the warnings, the threats, the collapse. When the defense lawyer tried to twist it, I said calmly, the math doesn't care about opinions. Richard couldn't look at me. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, the courtroom went silent. 10 years for fraud, 5 for negligence. He didn't say a word as they led him away. Outside, reporters crowded me, asking if I felt vindicated. I just said, no one wins when a community collapses. And I meant it, because pride built those decks, but arrogance made them fall. Lesson: strength without integrity always collapses.